Hello, everyone. Welcome to Raising the Stakes, Episode 3, where we turn the interview around on Kara to answer questions we get from the community. I'm your guest interviewer, Jay Knight, Head of Marketing here at Colorado Craft Beef. Kara, how you doing today?
Doing great. How you doing, Jay?
I've been busy. Been doing a lot of stuff on my end, and working with Jeff on some of that wholesaling stuff. So it's always something. We all know that here at CCB. But there's been a lot going on at the ranch, and I unfortunately wasn't able to be out there for all of it. But one of the things we really wanted to talk about today and answer some questions about and get some information from you about was turning cattle out and branding this spring.
Yes,
And
spring's a fun time.
it's my favorite time to come out to the ranch. And I know things are green out there right now. It's a lot of fun, a lot of wind, but that's what it is when you live on the plains, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to get a quick snapshot from you, and have you talk a little bit about spring branding season, its importance to not necessarily the company or us, but to ranching in general out here in Colorado, and why it matters.
Yeah, branding's one of those things that most ranchers or ranching communities look forward to all year. It's not only just the art of branding, but it's like such a community event. It's we just are able to, go down the road and help our neighbors and get together with people that maybe you haven't seen all year. I mean, I know some ranchers that's really such their big annual event where they invite people from all over. So it really is a fun time of year, but also there's practical reasons that we brand. So in the American West, the majority of basically from Nebraska, Kansas, kind of depends on the state. Not all states are brand states, but you think about the most of the American West, we actually are what we call brand states. So that means that these cattle either have to have a brand or have a brand inspection of some kind to prove ownership of them. So that's where branding starts, right, is to actually have a brand on all of these cattle. So you know who actually owns the cattle. So that's really where branding starts. However, that's not the only reason that we do it. It's really to set these calves up for success for their whole life as well. They start off, they're firstborn. You hope they always get colostrum because that's incredibly important to make sure that their health starts on the correct trajectory. So they're born, they get colostrum from their mothers. And then when that colostrum starts to wane, that's typically about the time, branding comes in to bolster that immune system again, which also part of branding is typically giving vaccines as well. So you continue to build that immune system to where these cattle can go on to their next stage in life. So we're just setting that up for success from a very young age and setting that trajectory to where they can continue to be healthy and thrive throughout their entire life.
And this the administration of the vaccines, the branding, any other medicine that might be needed at the time, that all happens at once. And if you haven't seen our videos, listeners, to what it looks like when we're going through it with Kara and the others on horseback, and the team on the ground that is administering care, and the branding. I remember my first time coming out to the ranch, I guess it was almost 4 years ago now. And it was like, wow, okay, we're really getting after it, because I'd been at other places where it was maybe done by a smaller team without the horses. Cattle were being run through chutes, but we, I don't want to say we, I mean, I've been a part of it, but at CCB, we really do it. It seems like, I don't want to say classic way, but it how would you say we do it? What word would you use?
You know,
Traditional?
heritage and tradition kind of
Okay.
come to mind. But that isn't the only reason. Because especially when I moved back to the ranch and really just started to think about what we do and how we do it and why. I always come back to just because we can doesn't necessarily mean that we should. So when you think through that process of like, you know, we're branding how we do, you know, because we do rope and drag calves to the fire to be able to brand. And I think about it from, you know, it was a tradition, yet also when it's done with skilled people and skilled horses and a skilled crew, the amount of time that it takes to do it is very fractional. And I would say really a lower stress environment than having to do so many other things. You know, not to say that running them over, you know, a calf table or, you know, something like that as far as processing could potentially be, you know, less stress. Yet, you know, I mean, the amount of time that it takes us to be able to sort cows from calves and get them to where we're going to brand them and vaccinate. And then as soon as that's done, they're back with their moms. I mean, it is done appropriately, relatively, you know, as low stress as we could make an event like that in our cattle's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it does take a community, and everyone's there just to, you know, there is nothing else going on that day. We are focused on the calves. We are getting them back to their moms, getting everything done as soon as possible. So I'm an insider with an outsider perspective sometimes, and I just always feel so impressed by everything when I'm at the branding. And you know, it does tie into that legacy piece. And how does the brand mark that calf's place within kind of the larger system?
So of course you start with, you know, a brand as far as ownership. You know, and our family brand has been in our family since the early 1900s. So to me, that means something. And to most ranches, their brand means a lot. You know, it's outside of just the brand of the company. Like that's truly that brand that signifies that ranch that has for, you know, 5 generations now for us. And there is a sense of pride in that brand. But also to me, that brand means more than just the mark. It's what's behind it. And you'll hear in a lot of places with a lot of ranches of, you know, there's the people that work for them, they say that they're riding for the brand. You know, they're physically riding for the brand, but also, you know, metaphorically riding for the brand. And there's a reason for that. You know, it's a bigger meaning than just what that mark is, or, you know, in like an e-commerce business, what that brand actually means. That brand is like a generational legacy. And it means different things to different people and different parts of the country. But, you know, for me in particular, you know, it means that heritage of where we came from and the kind of the deep down roots of the ranching industry. And that's something that particularly, you know, with our horses carry that brand as well. And you have the choice to brand a horse or not, you know. Really, you know, with livestock, particularly cattle, most of the time it's like, well, you need to brand them to make sure that you're proving ownership. But a lot of times with a horse, it's you can make that choice. You know, say if you bought a horse and then you decide that you want them to carry that brand because it means something, because in essence they have kind of earned that right. So when they're out in the show pen or they're out in the rodeo arena or they're out on the ranch, somebody sees that brand and they're like, I know what that means. And it means something. It's a deeper concept than just a mark on livestock to me.
Now you can see the brand in some of our recent videos, but explain what it looks like. Explain how the brand looks.
Yeah, so the family ranch brand is, it's as it's seen, but when you spell it out, it actually makes a little more sense. So it's /N. So it's 2 slashes, 2 angled slashes, and then an N, which has just been, it's been in our family for generations now. Actually, the original brand documents are at my dad's house. They're hung up because it does mean something. And in something different than some other states, in the state of Colorado, is you own that brand. So you can put that brand on whatever location you would like to. So, for example, whether it was shoulder or hip, left hip, right hip, doesn't matter. It signifies the same ownership. And there's some other states where you actually could have the same brand in a different location and it indicate different ownership. So different owners could have it on the shoulder, then a different owner could have the brand on the hip. So depending on what state you're in, it's actually, a fun fact that it can mean different things as far as a brand goes.
It'd be cool to see those documents someday if your father was willing to share. So that kind of leads us to a little bit more ranching philosophy, and really what goes into a lot out here is working with nature and not against it, and taking the time and making sure that at the end of the day, we are honoring the land and the animals and looking out for the long view of the operation here. How much is nature informing you on what the day-to-day is going to be like, especially during the spring right now?
I'd say nature is dictating so much of what we do. So, for example, cattle and horses both, they quit cycling. So their reproductive cycles stop over the winter. They go into what we call anestrus. That's for a reason, because we want to have young foals or young calves hit the ground where we live here in Colorado during this time, because you think about that's the time where they have the most forage too. So, grass is starting to green up. It's starting to grow. So if we think about us playing into nature of, letting those animals make sure that, the reproductive side is kind of timed with nature. These young calves are hitting the ground in the spring because that is when they have the most ample forage. And it's, it's coinciding with their growth trajectory as well. So when they need the most nutrients, they have the most natural nutrients coming from the grass, or, their dam or their mother does as well. So she has the most opportunity to produce the most milk to be able to nourish that baby. Like, there's a lot of things that we intuitively, or nature intuitively does, that, we stay on that trajectory instead of trying to manipulate that for our own purposes, in essence. Of when maybe it might be a little bit more convenient for us. There's a lot of those thought processes that go into what we do. We stockpile forage. So in essence, this time of year, all the way through the growing season, everything is continually growing. Hay, our grasses, like all of the things that nature's providing us. So we're able to harvest that this time of year and then put it up in, hay to be able to feed that throughout the winter. So much of this is very seasonal minded when it comes to agriculture in general, but, ranching and the way that we ranch here in the American West, because, down in like the Southeast, for example, their calving season is very different than ours. They typically, they're more fall calvers. So they're waiting until, fall into winter, because they're waiting until the summer is not so hot, and like their forage is different. Their environment is different than ours is here. So there's some of these cycles that can be very different depending on where you live. So we keep that in mind with what we're doing in this part of Colorado and how we're doing it. That's why our ground primarily is summer grazing, because that's when we have the most rainfall. That's when we have the daylight that's telling the grass to grow. That's when we have enough heat for that to happen. Like we're not trying to fight nature. We're trying to make sure that we're working with it.
Well, I also think it's important for our partners, for our customers, to know that there's not the way to do what we do and what ranchers have to do and what people in the food supply need to do to harness the environment that they find themselves in. A farmer in Kansas is up against different challenges than a farmer in Illinois. Ranchers in different states. I mean, even like within our own state, our environment is completely different than 20 miles north, south, east, or west. So I just, would like to point that out. Like, if you want to know more about what goes into your the food that comes to your plate, talk to your local farmers. Like, just get them on the phone. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that would like to chat. I think there's some that wouldn't like to chat, but I think there's a lot more out there to all of this than what meets the eye. I mean, that's why we're doing the show. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but we were talking about setting calves up for success, and the health and the nutrition and the vaccinations and the low stress handling. I think one of the things people would really like to hear more about is what goes into choosing and applying the vaccinations on cattle, because I don't think people hear about it, but they don't necessarily know how or why, and then it gets conflated with things outside of the beef industry. So is there something that we can, or that you can tell us about this? I know you've got an extensive background, so I'd really like to hear more.
So first place I would start is, we're in the business of keeping cattle healthy. Like that's our ultimate goal, right? So they can be healthy and they can thrive. And vaccines are a tool to help with that. And it depends on, once again, the nuance of the conversation, on where you are, what your risk level for some of these diseases may be. So it does vary depending on the producer and depending on the risk of your cattle potentially getting sick with something. Typically, though, just like the basis of vaccines, doesn't matter if it's cattle, humans, you name it. There's one of two ways to mount an immune response. One is either natural exposure, or the other one is from vaccines. So those are the two ways for you to be able to mount an immune response to a particular, pathogen, bug, whatever you may call something. So those are the two ways. So with vaccines, basically what we're trying to do is bolster that immune system to where if it does ever encounter a challenge, whether it comes up with bovine respiratory disease of some kind, that hopefully it can fight that off. So really we're trying to make sure that animal's immune system is the strongest it possibly can be, so it can continue to thrive, be able to fight off that disease in some form or fashion. So there's many different pathogens, risk load, whatever it may be, that you may choose to vaccinate your cattle for or not. But that is part of it. And really, one of the big things with cattle health too is this was set up even before these calves were born. So the health of that dam is huge. Making sure that she is healthy and making sure that she is producing high quality colostrum, that first milk that baby's going to get, that has all of these natural antibodies already in it. So we've already set this up from the beginning to make sure that these cattle have the best opportunity to continue to stay healthy, continue to grow, and continue to reach their genetic potential, which is what we all hope for and what we strive for. So if anybody has any specific questions, I'd love to go into those. But that's the basis of what we're trying to do with just vaccinating cattle in general. It's just to keep them healthy and continue to thrive.
Mm-hmm. And they're out there looking great. So we just need to keep it up. And we want to move from cattle a little bit and talk a little bit about something that's coming up, Mother's Day, and talk about motherhood and legacy a little bit. And so for personal reflections from you, what would you say raising kids and raising calves have in common?
So I don't think we have time for all of the details that I would go into. I know Jeff makes a joke all the time that I'm the cow nerd, which I am. That is just the story of my life, is being a cow nerd. And you may or may not be surprised, Jay, I make a lot of correlations with cow science and human science, which, we're all mammals. But, there's some things maybe that can cross over, some things maybe that don't. But I do reflect a lot on the things that we do from a health perspective to be able to keep cattle healthy. I mean, even what I just mentioned of like the health of this calf was set up in utero. It was already kind of designed. How we fed that cow, especially in the third trimester, has a massive impact on the genetic potential that calf will have once it's born. And then, the colostrum side and all of the things that, like, frankly, even started with the cow. It didn't just start with that calf when that calf was born. So I'm sure Jeff got tired of talking about cows throughout my pregnancy, but I guess nobody, probably got too offended. But I do reflect on that a ton, because that's the world that I come from, and we have a lot of science that backs how that dam did impact that calf and their calf health. So, I started that journey a long time ago, I guess, over 5 years ago, of thinking about how I was fueling my body, because I was fueling that tiny human's body, to make sure that they could have the best opportunity in life possible. And I still have that mindset. It's maybe different now because I'm not directly fueling their body, but I'm indirectly, guiding that. And that's something that I take pretty personal, of, like, hey, this is a big deal, because I'm a cow nutritionist by trade, and I know what impact we can have with nutrition with a calf. We can have a massive impact from a human perspective as well on how we're fueling those bodies, because those bodies are fueling their minds and their growth, and their so many other things that I can't lose sight of my nutrition background, I guess, of knowing that there is a lot of crossover, just thinking about what we are putting into a body for it to be the best that it possibly could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, except for visiting around Halloween or after Halloween, typically the nutrition that I've seen placed at the table is on point. And Emma and Addie are, they're so smart. They're getting so big, and they look at food. What I think is a testament to you and Jeff. They look at food in a way that I don't think I looked at it until I was maybe a teenager, understanding that this is protein. The conversation growing up in the Midwest, like I did, I think it was, my mom would talk about meat and starches and vegetables. Those were the three major food groups. And sugar was a garnish to life.
Yeah.
So I think like the way that you talk and think, I've seen it in like firsthand, just how it is playing out in how the girls are growing up. And to talk more about nourishment, not just with our physical bodies, but you have a responsibility to teach the responsibility of what's going on around the ranch, and to kind of oversee independence and build confidence. I mean, gosh, Kara, I was clapping when I saw Emma on the horse the last time I was out. She was killing it. And I know, just from all the parents I know, there's like this, yes, that's awesome. Oh no. Yeah, what is it like to teach in this environment? Because I would have to assume the environment your girls are growing in, I mean, there's no walls. I mean, you can see the horizon in every direction. So if they wanted to go, they're going to go. So I don't know. Talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot of freedom out there.
There is. And there's something that is very peaceful with that, and also, I mean, for me, it's comforting, but I can see how it could also be overwhelming too. It's like, oh my gosh, like big skies, open spaces. Like, I mean, I reflect back to my childhood, and my mom basically was like, well, if you're going to be inside, I'm going to give you a broom so you can go outside. And I was like, all right, I will be outside all day. And she had a dinner bell that she would ring for lunch. I mean, and you at least could hear it anywhere on the ranch, but it was just go play all summer. You're just outside with nature and having screens and everything. You had sticks and rocks and critters, but it also does come with kind of a level of risk of like, there are things out here, frankly, that can hurt you. And that level of respect that they have to have for that is different than it, potentially would be in town. Because there are things out there that not only could hurt, but they could kill it. They could kill kids, like people in general. Like there are dangerous things. So teaching them that level of reverence for those things was very, very top of mind. If they hear machinery moving, they know exactly where they need to be, or they need to stand still. Like and any of our horses, they're very kind, they're very gentle, but they know without a doubt, like, there's horses turned out here, they're not getting out there with them. Just that's a bad idea. Don't do it. So they know those kind of big rules to be able to stay safe too. Which, good and bad, I suppose. They have that ability to be able to do it. And there's some point as a parent that you just have to trust that you have taught them that. Mm-hmm. But also, I would say that our kids have been taught like some of the emergency things probably before a lot of other kids. I mean, Emma knows if something happens, what she needs to do. She knows she needs to call 911, or she, by default, if that doesn't work, what do you do? Like, there's some of those things that almost seem over the top, yet if something happens, it's really not, like as a 5-year-old, she knows if there's an emergency, what she needs to do, because she was taught that, because you never know. You never know if that might happen.
And I know what lessons you're teaching, because when I come, they will let me know how to be safe, or I'm following the rules.
Well, Emma will let you know how to follow the rules. Yeah. Addie will be like, this is how you don't follow the rules, Mr. J. So.
Well, you have the lawyer and the defendant.
Yes.
And let me ask you a question. Just purely for Mother's Day, how much fun are you having being a mom?
It is the hardest yet the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
Everyone, thank you again for coming to Raising the Stakes. I'm your guest host, Jay Knight, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.